All right, so here we go, another video. Why? Because something wasn't as cut and dry as I thought it was. So you kind of see the makings of what's going to happen here. So what I have here is an MSD super disk drive. It's a dual drive model. This is their top of the line model. This is great for duplicating disks. Basically, it has its own controller, it has RAM, it has two ROMs that you can replace to make it even faster using software from CLD called Mass Duplicator. And basically, it's internal software. What it does is you put a disk in, a source and a destination disk in there, and it automatically detects that you've done that and starts, a copy process. You don't even need the computer hooked up to do that. Anyways, that's for another video. Right now, what I have in front of me basically is a repair job. So this initially came to me and it had this switch hanging from the back. And so I'm thinking, well, it's either a drive select switch or it's a Jiffy DOS switch. So I opened this up and this just popped out. It wasn't, it just, the solder joints on it, I guess, were so weak that it just wasn't holding it. So I'm glad I looked at it before turning it on. So this switch is gone. So when I took it apart, all the screws are old flathead screws, a lot of rust on them. So we're going to be replacing the screws as well. So what are we doing here? So what I ended up doing when I took this switch out, I put in jumpers. Yep. I put in jumpers there for drive selects rather than having a switch. So I'll show you that when we open this up. And I've already got it unscrewed and ready to open up. Why? Well, that's what I'm going to show you right now. So let's turn this on and I'm going to show you what's going on. And I already have a hunch. I know what it is, but here's a learning opportunity, right? So first things first, I already have this plugged in. This has an IEEE port on the back. And my intent was to, put an IEEE card on the Commodore and use the IEEE cable because it's faster. But right now I have a serial cable hooked up just like a regular drive. And I'll show you the back once I get this all unplugged here. And let's just get down to it. Let me just turn this thing on. You always want to turn the computer on after the device because the computer will send some signals to the device, resetting it and all this other stuff. So initializing it and what have you. So definitely want to turn the computer on afterwards. Okay, so the lights are going on, drive 0, drive 1, light went on, got the power, there's no error lights going on, everything seems honky-dory, right? So the way this works is, depending on how you have your device set, I have this set as device 0. I'm sorry, as device 8, okay? So there's two drives in here, but it's not like device 8 and device 9. No, the unit is device 8 because it is a full-blown device. This is drive 0 and this is drive 1. Okay, so in order for me to access either drive, I have to not only select that, send a command to device 8, I have to select either 0 or 1, the default being 0. So I have my trusty old test disks here. So I'm going to basically put them both in. Okay, and now I'm going to send this load command and let me show you how that works. Okay, I had to reposition the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. So normally what happens is if you were to do this, it would load a directory off of your device 8 drive. In this case, what will happen, device 8 has two drives in it, right? 0 and 1. If I did this on this MSD drive, it would actually load the directory from both disks. And when I hit the list command, it would show me both directories. But hence, this is the problem. So if I just wanted to, for example, just look at device, the 0 device, not both of them, I would put that device number after the $sign. If I wanted to look at device 1, let's say, then I would change that to a 1, and that would give me the second drive. So basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to choose the directory from drive 0. Okay, so you can see here as soon as I hit the enter command, okay, drive 0 is lighting up, and that's drive 0 floppy right there. Okay, so if I list the directory, there you go. Everything great, right? All right. So now, oops. Let's see what happens if I try to load the directory off device 1. Okay, so okay, so let's see what's going to happen as soon as I hit enter here. Okay, so device 1 is wearing, and now look, I get an error. Okay, so it's not reading that directory. So that's problematic, right? So I'm going to shut this computer off and back on to reset the drive. And we can see here, if I try to load it, why do I keep doing this? Okay, file not found. Now that's a typical response on a drive that has an issue with its controller or the drive itself, obviously. And the drive 1 light was blinking. So obviously there's something wrong with the second drive in the system, and hence this video. So I have a feeling I already know what's wrong, because MSD drives notoriously have capacitors that just leak, and once they start leaking, everything starts going south, and that's on the drive itself, on the floppy PCB itself. So let's take a look and see what we've got. And just to prove that it's the drive and not the controller and not the unit itself, the device itself, the first thing I'm going to do is I have another MSD drive here in front of me, a single drive. I'm going to take the drive out of that, the disk drive out of this one, and swap it, for this guy. Okay, so that will determine whether it's the drive or the controller right off the bat. Okay, so let's get that process going. Okay, so I already have the screws out. Like I said, I already knew that was going to be a problem, and that's how I wanted to get this video going. All right, so there's the cover off. Let me unplug the power here real quick. Okay. So let me show you what we've got here. All right, so the cover's off. Here's your controller. Here are the 2 ROMs, the 2 DOS ROMs. And then basically there's a RAM chip. We can install a socket here and add another 2K, well, it's 8x2, but a 2K RAM chip here to give it more memory. So if I was doing the mass duplicator, I'd end up replacing these 2 ROMs here and adding the memory. So that's for another video. So the mass duplicator allows this thing to automatically duplicate diskettes at a very fast rate, because it handles everything on its own. I don't need the Commodore for that. It'll handle everything by itself. So that's for another video. I think there's one video out there that already shows how that works, and it's pretty cool. What I did with that switch, as you can see here, I put jumpers. So all the jumpers, the 2 jumpers being shorted, it's just like your 1571. The two jumpers being shorted is device 8. If you take the top one off, device 9. If you take the bottom one off and leave the top one on, that's 10. If you take them all off, it's device 11. So that sets your device number for this whole unit. Now there's two drives here. They're FB501 drives, if I'm not mistaken. There is a Chinon, C-H-I-N-O-N, however you want to pronounce it, drive that might be a good duplicate or a replacement, substitute. If you can't find one of these drives and the drive is actually bad. But the problem with those, but the issue with those is it has a beige front bezel. It's a little bit different. But the drive, I believe, is a reasonable substitute. These FB501 drives also came in the Radio Shack FD501 boxes, I believe. Some of them also came in K-Pro 2s. So there's a few different systems that might have these drives as replacements as well. But in our case, I think that we can fix this drive. So let's find out that it's the drive first and foremost and not anything on the controller. Okay, so let's take this drive out and let me show you a little bit more about this drive. So to take this drive out, basically there's 4 screws on the bottom. You just have to unscrew and the drive will just slide itself right out. My OCD kicks in and I see this, and so this pad really should go right here. We'll have to put some double face tape on that later. All right. Anyways, sorry for the distraction. So I'm going to disconnect the power from the drive as well as the ribbon cable from it. Okay, so here's the drive. So a couple of things to notice on this drive. This was drive 1. Doesn't have to be drive 1. Here's where you set the device jumper. And right now it's on drive 1. If I put it here on the first one, that would be drive 0. This also has a terminator on it, a resistor terminator here as well. So we're going to replace this drive, and you're going to see that on the single drive, the drive is set for device 0, and that single drive should also have a terminator on it. Okay, but other than that, the drive should be the same. All right. So what do I think the problem is? I think the problem is these capacitors here. Okay, these are the ones that leak. There's this one, these two, there's this one over here, this one over here, and you can't really see it, but I'm seeing a little bit of corrosion on the Zener diode next to it. So this board comes out pretty easy for the capacitors to be replaced. There's 3 screws. There's 1 screw here, there's 1 screw here, there's 1 screw here on the bottom. Those 3 screws come out, and then there's a plug that you unplug here, that's 1, a plug that you unplug here, that's 2, and then there's 2 plugs underneath here. So when I take this apart, which I ultimately will because I really firmly believe it's the drive, we'll see how that goes. So let's get the single drive unit in here, and let's take a look at that one. All right, here's the single drive. All right, now the single drive is not much different, okay? It has a controller, same controller, except it's missing a chip here, you know, the second one. That's the 2 DOS chips in it. The drive is the same, connects the same way. So it's basically identical. I can probably swap this controller for that one as long as I have that chip here. But that's neither here or there. Let's go ahead and take this drive out and see if the drive is the issue. I'm going to unplug the power here, plug, And I'm going to unplug the ribbon cable. Okay. Here's a better look at the controller board. Okay. So let's set this aside. All right. So see, here you go. The drive is the same. Notice here, again, they had the device set for device 0, or the drive set for drive 0, and they have a terminator already on here. So we really don't have to do anything except move this jumper over to make this 1, because this other drive that's in the SD2 is already set to 0. Okay, so put this back on its side here. So now let's see what we've got. Okay, plug this back in. All right. So let's turn this guy on. Okay, went through its checkup real quick. Let's turn the computer on. And we have one floppy in there. Oh, I left the floppy in the other drive. So let's go ahead and turn the computer. No, we turned the computer on. So let's turn the computer on again. Okay, it's going through the motions. Okay, so now I'm going to, let's look at the screen before we look at, well, it's okay. I'm going to say load, and then I'm putting the $0 in front. That worked the last time, right? Let's go and drive 0, and I'm looking at the screen right now, and I get no error. Okay, there you go. You can manage to see that. Okay, there's a directory listing. Okay. All right. So now, the last time we tried this, we tried device 1, and device 1 didn't work. It gave us file not found, right? So, and I'm thinking, like I said, it's the drive, and I'm thinking it's the capacitors on the drive, and this will prove it because we replace the drive with a good drive, and that way we know it's not the controller. This works. So I'm hitting return. It's reading drive 1 now, and you can see on the screen that I no longer get the file not found error, and I can list, I should be able to list the directory. Now here's the cool part that I was alluding to earlier. Let me move this here so you can see the screen better. That's really cool with this is that I can, if I just load this without a 0 or a 1 in front of it, without the unit number, okay, it's actually reading both drives. And when I do a list command, see, it's showing me both directories. See, let's take a look at the drive, and you can see what it does when I do that. Load $8. You can see drive 1 is spinning and loading, drive 2 or drive 0 is spinning and loading, loaded the directories on both, and that's what it should be doing, and that's why it displays both directories. Again, the MSD drive is made primarily for mass disk copying. It's really fast. So, and by really fast, it's relative, right? It's probably maybe 20 seconds to copy unvalidated a disk from one to the other. So anyways, That's for another video. This is a repair video, and like you've just seen, the problem was with the drive, not the controller, not anything on the controller, the drive itself. And really, I'm thinking it's those capacitors. So that's what we're going to tackle next. I'm going to leave this in. I'm going to put this back together. This is working, obviously. And like I said, we'll leave the functionality to another video, but let's go ahead and do the repair to those capacitors, and let's see if that works for us in our favor. So give me one quick second here. Okay, before I put this aside, I did want to show you the back side of this. Okay, the back side of this has an IEEE connector. Like I said, that's a lot faster. And I bought a cable and an IEEE adapter for the Commodore to make that work. So again, we'll demonstrate that in a future video. It has a serial port on the top and the bottom, so you can daisy chain, views, and yeah, so pretty simple as far as the back is concerned. All right. So that leaves us with this guy. And let's just double check again. This drive that we pulled out of the SD-2. Okay, so for this guy, we already set the jumper to 0 for this device. We already have the terminating resistor in there. So let's go ahead and plug this guy in. And we should see file not found. Let me boot this up. Get some power on here. The serial cable in there. Okay. Let's turn this on. And turn the computer on now. Let's throw a diskette in here. Doing a directory, loading a directory. Diskette comes on, and there you go, error light. And of course, what we get on the screen is the same error that we got on the SD-2 for this drive, which is file not found. Okay, so again, that leads me to the disk drive. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this board out and start replacing some capacitors in here. Okay, so like I had mentioned early on, there's 3 screws here. There's one here. There's one here. All right, so once you have those 3 screws, there's this guy here, this plug here. Don't yank it by the wires. Okay. Okay, so there's that one. There's this guy here. Again, I don't yank it by the wires. There's a little ridge on it, so if you take a screwdriver and just kind of twist it, you'll see that it just kind of starts pulling itself out. Okay, so there's that one. And then underneath, when you pull this up, there's 2. There's 2 more right there. Don't grab them by the wires. Okay, so same thing. Just get the flathead and just pull them out. All right. So there's the board. That's the culprit. Okay, so let's see if we can pick this up here. I'm looking at this guy right here. And I don't know if the video can pick it up, but it is corroded underneath. And it does look like it had some leaking take place. The component, the Zener diode next to it, if you look at the solder points, they're not shiny, they're corroded. And if you can pick up the bottom, there's corrosion underneath the capacitor. So that is a huge suspect. The same with the one next to it. And we're going to replace all of them, but that one looks like that's the most suspect. The others don't look like they have any damage underneath, but you never know until you pop them out. But these guys here, especially that one right there, highly suspect. So that's the deal with these MSD, with the drives in here at least, not so much the MSD boards, the 501 drives. All right, so let's get down to it. Okay, so let's first attack this guy. I'm just really curious to see what's underneath this capacitor. So that capacitor right there is going to be these two. This guy goes across here, and then it's these two right there. Yeah. Okay. So all right. Okay, so you can see the corrosion there. It's even attacked the Zener diode to the left of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up, maybe replace that Zener diode as well, and yeah, and see where this takes us. I'll replace all the capacitors actually, but I think this is the main culprit here. The corrosion that's around it is pretty bad. So after I test all the traces, then I'll put a new capacitor in there and we'll see what we got. All right, so stay tuned. Okay, so I cleaned this up as best I could, and got a lot of the corrosion off. So I think at this point we are ready to put in a couple of new 10 microfarad capacitors here. All right, let's see how this goes. Stay tuned. Okay, so got a couple of new 10 microfarad capacitors that I soldered back in. I'll solder these, or unsolder these, or I'll recap these three right here, these 47s. Once we test this out, I'm just curious to see if this is, because these were the two capacitors here that were causing a lot of corrosion. So we'll test this thing out now that I've replaced the capacitors, and if it works, then we've saved another drive. So good. All right, so let's test this out and let's put this back together again. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Otherwise, we'll start replacing chips. Well, we'll start testing chips and then replacing chips. All right. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna test this in here. Well, let's turn this on first. All right. Okay, for some reason, it doesn't look like it spins up as much as it did before. Ho ho ho! There we go. Yes, we have success. So now that that drive is working, we can put the one that was the one that was actually for this back in, and we can take this one and put this one back in the SD2 that we just took it out of. And now I can show you a little bit about what the SD2 is all about. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so now that we've got this drive working, let's get this SD2 back together again. And then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to the SD2 because there's some upgrades to it. So let's get this thing back in here. Okay. So let's make sure that this works before you go any further. Let's plug this guy in and test this real quick here. All right. Get a couple of diskettes here. First of all, let's turn this on. Okay, let's turn the computer on. So that's good. Got diskettes in both drives here. Let's take a look at the screen here real quick. And if we just do a default, it should load both directories as one. Okay, so I should see both directories right now. There's 1, 2. Awesome. Both drives are working. Very nice. All right, so let me explain what I'm going to do next here. Okay, next on the agenda is I'm going to be replacing the ROMs in there with the CLD. CLD is the name of the company. I forgot, is the acronym for the company. I forgot. Creative, I don't know, something design, I think. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the text on the screen. And then I'm also going to add a 2K RAM chip to this. So I'm going to add a socket right here for the RAM chip. That'll make the drive work faster. These two ROMs have pretty cool systems in them where basically it'll allow you to autocopy. If you put two disks in here and you put them in there the right way, it'll automatically start copying the disks. You don't even need the computer. Back in the day, I had two of these. I'm running a BBS, and that was a lot of disk space. But what made you godlike was you take one of these to a copy party, and they would this would copy disks in 15-20 seconds. And if you had these chips have software that joins up with them, Cracker Jacks, dual cannon software, and it had a nibbler in it, so it would nibble a disk, and so it would copy a lot of copy protected disks. And like I said, in 15-20 seconds you were king. This is the manual, the operating manual to the drive itself. It's like 50 pages. I mean, this drive does so much stuff. And then you have two of my favorite copy software that I used was the Cracker Jacks, the dual drive cannon. I don't know if I said that right the first time, dual cannon drive. Anyways, this had a nibbler, a fast copier, a file copier, a sector editor. I mean, this had everything. This was king. And then one of my other favorites was Nick's Swift Copy, because it had a lot of utilities and things like that. So anyways, this was the drive. I mean, this was the pinnacle. This was everybody's holy grail. These MSD SD-2s. They were very expensive, unattainable for many because of the price. But anyways, so let me get those two ROM chips in here and the RAM, and then let me show you how the AutoCopy works. This is pretty cool. You don't even need a computer for it. You just pop two disks in here and it just does it all by itself without having anything hooked up. It's pretty rad. And yeah, maybe I'll show you a couple other features. I don't want to get into the features in this video. I want to make another video that's a little bit more full length with all the features, showing off all the things it can do. The main thing with this video was showing you how to repair an MSD drive. A typical repair, I mean, anything can go wrong, but the typical repairs for these drives is the capacitors that leak, and then they mess up the board with corrosion. And so if you have one of these, I would suggest that you open it up and take a look at the drive board and make sure that your capacitors aren't leaking. And even if whether they are or they're not, I would replace them because they will eventually leak. All right, so let's do this and stay tuned. Okay, so we got the RAM socket soldered in there. Okay, we're going to replace those two chips. Unfortunately, the stickers came off because they're so old. When chips are new, the pins are not at 90 degrees with the chip, so kind of have to fold them in a little bit in order to get them to line up with the socket. Okay, so we got both chips in there. See if you can see that. And we got the ROMs and the RAM. So let's turn this on and see what we got. All right, stay tuned. So let's wrap this up. I put the case back on. The case, I cleaned up the case and everything. I labeled it, put a label here indicating that this has the CLD ROMs in it and 2K of RAM. So I have the Commodore here. It's not on, it's shut off. This is shut off. I'm going to leave the Commodore off because that is the coolest feature of this thing that the CLD ROMs provide you. So I have two disks, okay? I have an original, the source disk that I'm going to put in here, okay? And the source disk should have a write protect on it. Otherwise, you're going to leave it off halfway because the bottom line is you don't want the sensor, the read-write sensor, to detect that that the disk is writable. It'll detect that it's copy protected and know that that's the source. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. On the second disk, you want the copy protection tab off, but I'm going to put it in halfway because that means that it thinks it's write protected. So if it thinks there's two write protected disks in there, it's going to start the auto copy process and wait for you to put a writable disk in here, and it'll start copying by itself. So that's why we're leaving it halfway in. We're blocking the sensor, right? So now if I turn this thing on, again, Commodore is off. I turn this thing on. You see the lights blinking fast, green. Now it's waiting for you to put a blank disk in here, and it'll do the formatting and everything. And I'm going to leave this in real time so you see just how fast this thing is. If you have a Commodore and you're copying disks, you know how slow that process is. So I'm going to pop this in there. You see the lights going, and there you go, by itself. There you go, finished. If I didn't speed up the video, you can kind of count the seconds by the number of blinks on the lights. If I sped up the video, I should say, you can count the number of seconds by the blink on the lights. It took about 15 seconds, and I don't know if I really want to leave the video rolling that long. I ramble, so I can talk for 15 seconds straight. Anyways, so it's done. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so now let's turn on the computer, resets the drive, and let's put these disks back in there. And now if I look at the screen, I should have two directories that show up when I load the directory, and they should be identical because we just copied the disk. So one, two, identical directories. So there you go. There you have it. I mean, that's one of the beautiful powers of this thing. So you can see, I mean, in the short amount of time it takes to copy a disk, how popular you would be if you went to a disk copying party. Now, the CLD documentation states that it can't copy protected disks, but that's where the crackerjack software comes in that I showed you earlier. That will help copy a lot of copy protected disks because you can use the nibbler for that. And then there's other things that have come out, more technology came out afterwards that, you know, pretty much copy protection was kind of useless on the Commodore, because there's so many products being put out that pretty much broke it. I mean, it was almost like a cat and mouse game. And eventually, you know, the cat won because the mouse kind of slowed down and gave way and went out of business, right? So anyways, just wanted to show you that. It's a cool feature. Look for my future video showing you a lot of the other features in here, like the duplicate command, the fcopy command. I mean, there's a lot of really cool things that this thing does as well. So anyways, I hope you got something out of this. At the very least, you know what the typical symptom and fix is for an SD drive that goes bad. And you hopefully got a little something on what the MSD was all about. So, like I always say, enjoy life. Life is short. You gotta really enjoy it. So, all right, till next time. Peace out.